welcome. It's Chris from Christopher Hole Training, and welcome to the 4 ways to get the most from core exercises. Now, I quickly just want to introduce what I'm going to be talking about before I actually go into the 4 ways. So we'll talk about those on the next slide. But for now, when we're talking about core exercises and exercises in general, what we don't want to be doing is doing them in isolation. So just doing core exercises on their own, because yes, our core will get a little bit stronger, it will get a little bit more stable, but what we want to be focusing on is doing stretching and exercising together, because most people do it, or most people do one or the other. So if they want to get stronger, they'll focus on just doing the core exercises, but what they won't focus on is stretching out the spine, stretching out the hips, and stretching out the shoulders, because it's when we do that our core gets that much stronger. And what also happens is, as our core gets stronger, it allows our hips to get a little bit looser. So we are working both of them together. And that's what I say is what completes therapy. So therapy is complete using both. So if we're talking about rehabilitation, so if you're overcoming an injury and you've been told to do core exercises, it's a very good idea to do core exercises and stretching to complete that therapy. But also on the flip side of that, if it's fitness as well, and you've been told you want to get stronger for whatever sport that you're doing, and you've been told, or it's a good idea to do core exercises, make sure you're doing the stretching that goes with it. Because if you've got loose hips and loose shoulders above and below your core is going to work that much more effectively. So it's combining the two and getting the balance right between the two, so you can get the most out of the exercises and the core exercises that you're doing. So that just kind of opens up and sort of sets up what I'm going to be talking about in the 4 ways to get the most from core exercises. But before we get into it, I just want to quickly mention my social media. So you can come along, like and follow. This is Twitter, @Christopher Hole, Facebook, Christopher Hole Training, or Instagram, Christopher Hole. So please do come along there, like and follow, comment, share. It'd just be great to have you there. Ask questions. Alternatively, come to the website where you can do one of many things. You can have a browse around. You can sign up to the monthly newsletter where we talk about anything and everything under the umbrella of health and fitness, which could be nutrition, exercise, habits and behaviors, all those types of things. And there are 12-week programs on there which you can find out more about, or you can just go onto the blog and have a browse, have a read, and see what we're talking about at Christopher Hole Training. So all in all, please do come along to social media or the website. It'd be great to have you there. So coming back to the 4 ways to get the most from core exercises. So what we want to be focusing on is, as I've mentioned, number 1 is select exercises for your whole core. So sit-ups and crunches work against your anatomy. Core exercises work for your anatomy. Now what that means is in mainstream fitness, people are using sit-ups and crunches. Now that comes from very much a bodybuilding philosophy or bodybuilding perspective, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to fatigue a muscle so we can allow it to grow, if you will. Now when we're talking about everyday function or athletic function, or being able to get the most out of a sport, then we want to be training our core and not muscles within the core, because your core is everything from your hips to your shoulders, so everything in between your ball and socket joints of your hip and shoulder. So there's a lot of muscles there, so we need to be doing exercises that promote that, because that's how your core works most effectively. It works, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So one exercise that starts to do that is a plank exercise. It's not the only exercise, and it's not necessarily the best exercise, but it is much better than sit-ups and crunches and back extensions and lateral bends and Russian twist type rotation exercises. So we want to start selecting exercises that start using our whole core rather than just single muscles within it. Number 2 is we want to start training movements, because our core muscles work best during those movements. So we want to start using chops, lifts, reverse chops from low to high. Now, if you don't know what these exercises are, it could be a good idea to go to Christopher Hole Training and have and start to look them up, or go to YouTube and start to look them up, whatever it might be. So we want to start training movements. Push-ups are another good example. Yes, people don't necessarily have very strong arms and shoulders for it, but a big part of that can be the core strength that comes with it as well. Number 3 is use static and dynamic exercises. So this would be described as a static core exercise because I'm holding a position. But what we would also do is use dynamic exercises like chops, lifts, pushes, pulls, carries, and all those different types of movement-based exercises that involve a lot of the core. So we want to start using both dynamic and static exercises. But what we would do is we would start with the static exercises. Build up the strength, build up the stability, build up the mental comprehension of being able to hold the position and hold your torso in its proper posture. What we would then do is we would then start layering on dynamic exercises where we involve a lot more movement. What a lot of people do is they tend to either do it the wrong way round, so they start with dynamic exercises, or they just miss out the static exercises and just go straight into the dynamic exercises because it's becoming a bit more fashionable to do big dynamic expressive exercises. But what they don't necessarily have is the mental capability or mental comprehension or mental capacity to be able to move your body in the proper position throughout that whole movement. So we need to be able to progress into it. So start with the static ones like planks, side planks, and then move into the dynamic ones like the chops, the lifts, the pulls, the pushes, the carries, and so on and so forth. And finally, it's use them together with stretches. So as I've mentioned before, a good core can improve range of movement. So when we start improving how our core works, that can start to free up how our hips and shoulders work. If we can then add another layer on top of that and stretch within all of that, we can then get more out of our everyday function, out of our athletic performance, and out of the sport that we want to do. Through all of that as well, with rehabilitation, obviously a good core training, so using all of these different steps or ways that I've talked about with regards to rehabilitation, building up the core, but also building the range of movement within the joint, using stretches, and then adding movement on top of that allows your body to relieve pressure on certain areas of the body. If we become stiff in certain areas, it puts pressure on certain areas. So what we need to be able to do is stretch, move, and do core exercises all together to be able to get a properly functioning body that can improve fitness and minimize risk of injury in the future. So hopefully that's been useful for you. Hopefully it's given you an idea of where you need to start thinking about taking your training or taking your exercise or taking your rehabilitation, and you can start applying some of these points that I've talked about and some of the concepts that I've talked about within your training regime that you're either already doing or that you're about to start. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from ChristopherHoldTraining.com. I will speak to you in a future video.